Hello, Tashi Delek. All right, so welcome to Wednesdays with the Rinpoche, and happy Wednesday to all of you. And so today we are gathered here to learn some wisdom from Buddha's teaching, and mainly we have started to learn one verses from Dhammapada, Buddha's teaching, a collection of Buddha's teaching. And so today from the ZaChoeje Dhammapada that I already posted on my Facebook, maybe you have seen it, and from the Dhammapada it goes like that in Tibetan. This Tibetan translation was done by this Tibetan scholar Gendun Chömbe, and then I just tried to translate that into English by myself, just kind of like whatever meaning I get from that one verses. And this one verses actually is a very powerful message from Buddha. So it goes like that. Joyful here in this life and hereafter. Virtuous person is joyful in both worlds. By seeing one's own pure action, they will be delighted and joyful in it. So somehow, so this wisdom word from Buddha teaching, and then I also got the one essence of that teaching, which is actually also I quoted myself. Pure action is joyful. Joyful action is effortless. So somehow this is the main topic to learn tonight. And as we all know that in the Dhammapada, when Buddha said, so like joyful, even in this life, as well as hereafter in next life. So somehow, whatever you do, if you do something virtuous thing, so what is virtuous thing? So virtuous person means the person who actually perform virtuous action, right? So somehow it is like a pure action. So pure sort of like whatever action we do, like when we actually perform action, so basically we use our body or our speech or our mind. And so there are many actions that we do in our day-to-day, everyday life. Like physically, there are a lot of things, right? Physically, like we do a lot of kind of action. So within the physical body, what we do is we use our eyes to look around, and then we use our ears to hear, and then we use our nose to smell, and we use our tongues to taste, and we use our body sense too for the touch. And so somehow, physically, we perform many action. So when we perform action, so there is kind of like a opposite of a virtuous action is like a non-virtuous action, right? So when we actually put like a non-virtuous action, we all know that there is like a 10 non-virtuous action, like a three categories from the body, like a bodily kind of action, and then 4 non-virtuous action from the speech, and then 3 non-virtuous action from our mind. So basically, whatever physically we are performing or action, any action, or verbally any action that we are saying or kind of expressing, and then mentally whatever we are thinking, or kind of how we use our mind. So somehow all this action, if it is free from 10 of those non-virtuous action, so 3 of the a non-virtuous action that is performing in our day-to-day life is kind of like something that we need to be free from, is we call it like a killing, right? So killing is a non-virtuous action, negative action, and so freeing any action that physically we do, if it is not something related to killing or stealing or like a misconduct, like a sexual misconduct, sort of if physically, if it is not included or related to any of these 3 actions somehow, then kind of it is not at all the time pure action, right? There are sometimes there's a neutral actions too, right? So something that is between virtuous action and non-virtuous action. Like for example, even if you are not killing or stealing or doing anything, just kind of sit still, you are not physically, kind of doing anything. But then the question is freeing, right? Freeing from those action, and not doing those action, or kind of completely sort of doing with the full sort of full intention, right? So somehow so when we actually perform action, so somehow action has this the process, a procedure, whatever we do, in the beginning, there is always an intention, right? So intention, at the beginning, if we have a negative intention or negative motivation, then somehow it kind of whatever action comes out of that negative intention or negative motivation, then that action somehow actually become polluted or kind of colored by our negative intention, or somehow any action that we actually perform with the negative intention, somehow it will kind of become negative. So when we actually to complete the action, sort of there is the intention, and then there is the actual actual action, and then we conclude that action with some sort of satisfaction or rejoice, oh, I did it. So kind of some sort of a contentment, sort of oh, I did it. Then somehow you actually complete that action, right? So somehow negative intention, if we have a negative intention, and then when we actually perform negative action, and then we actually sort of rejoice for whatever we did, sort of negatively. Even sometimes when we actually perform negative action, then we conclude that not with the guilt, but sometimes we actually conclude that not only with the joy, sometimes we actually conclude that with the guilt too, sort of like a guilt, like a feeling guilt. So that is also sort of like a negative. But somehow, when we have a negative intention, then even when we are having negative intention, like at that time, we are not joyful. Somehow, it is kind of like to have a negative intention is not a joyful one, right? We all know that. Nobody is really happy when they are having some sort of like a negative intention or negative thoughts. For example, if you want to sort of have a harming, to hurt, like if you want to hurt someone, like if you are plotting some sort of like a plan to hurt someone or to do something bad, then even when we are having that intention or motivation, nobody is really joyful about it, right? It is not joyful. It is it's somehow, it is very painful, and at the same time, to have a negative intention, to plot something, to plan something bad, it takes a lot of effort. So it is not effortless also. So somehow it is it takes a lot of energy. It's like it is very draining, right? It's a lot of draining our energy. And then somehow when we are actually having that negative intention, somehow it is kind of like we always kind of try to hide that negative intention, right? It's just like, even though you have a negative intention, you pretend like, oh, I'm not having any negative thoughts or negative intention. Why do we hide? Why do we hide negative intention? Because we know that it is not appropriate. And so it takes a lot of energy. And when we are actually trying to cover that negative intention, then it takes extra energy, extra effort, right? It's just like a lots of effort. Even in the beginning, before we perform any negative action or any non-virtuous action, it is very kind of like a tiring, very stressful, right? And then actually when we comes to actually performing the negative action, and even that time, say for example, like a killing, sometimes people think that maybe killing is so easy, effortless, but it is not effortless. It takes a lot of energy, and then many times it is if we really look into our instinctively, when you're killing something, it is like nobody is really joyful about it. It is just like a very, very, very stressful. It's like it doesn't come effortlessly. It takes a lot of effort, right? And then after the completion of the negative action, so somehow then again, because you know that that's not something right, and then you kind of trying to hide that or trying to cover it or kind of to make an excuse and all this sort of thing. And so say for example, like a killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, going in between the people's relationship, sort of like those things, kind of it takes a lot of effort, right? It doesn't come effortlessly, and it is also not a joyful one, right? Nobody is really happily doing it or joyfully doing it. It's just like doing it with such a tense. Then if you look at the opposite side of it, to have a good intention, right? A positive intention. Then to have a positive intention is, when you have a positive intention, it's very joyful, right? It's just it is joyful. And if we really look into it, it is kind of sometimes people think that having a positive intention is, it takes a lot of effort, but actually it doesn't take any effort. just kind of like it is sort of like it is very natural, right? It is so natural for us to have a positive intention, like for example, like a helping intention, right? Like, and we know that, like for example, if we actually look at like even when we are watching movies or reading like stories, and there we see in the movies that like, or in the stories, if there is a character who is very kind and who is always helping, somehow it's just kind of like we actually drawn, right? We are drawn toward that, and then somehow it is just kind of like naturally we feel like oh, this is the right thing that person is doing. Somehow it is just like we feel joyful for even like when other person, even if it is a story in the movie or in the book, if the character is like a kind and very helpful and having good intention and always selfless and helping others, somehow it is just kind of like it touches, right? It touches our heart. It touches our deep level, sort of like we just genuinely feel joyful about it, right? And then on the other hand, see, look at that. Like if you look at the, in the character, somebody is having a negative intention, very selfish intention, and then always kind of plotting something, trying to hurt someone, and doing something like that. And instinctively, how we feel about it, we are not joyful about it. It's just like, we are not joyful. We are actually sort of like, it brings some sort of stress, right? It just brings tension, right? It's just a kind of like some sort of like effort that we have to do physically, sort of like tension, like a stress in our mind, sort of like not really liking about it, right? So see, so that's kind of like I think what Buddha was saying is that joyful here in this life and hereafter, and virtuous person is joyful in both worlds. So somehow, if you live your life with the virtuous action, like most of the time, if we perform virtuous action, like for example, like helping, saving lives, and then like instead of stealing, like being generous, giving things to other who are people in need. And then, if some, like there is some relationship problem, if you are kind of going there to help and fixing those relations instead of kind of ruining their relationship, sort of like if we sort of like do that, then that is like a virtuous action. So the person who perform these kind of actions are considered to be virtuous person. So that is why, like Buddha said, "Gyewa cheva nigar chowa gyur," meaning virtuous person is joyful in both world. Both world meaning like a virtuous, here in this life as well as hereafter, like in next life. So that is kind of like I think the main essence of the Buddha's teaching is that here. So then kind of like the next two line is like by seeing one's own pure action, they will be delightful and joyful in it, right? So it is very true, right? Like when we do something virtuous thing, when we do something kind of spiritual, like ourselves, we feel proud about it, right? It is just like, oh, I did it. I did something good, and you can even like tell other people, share proudly, just kind of like, what, I did this, I did that, and so you kind of like you can see the joy in the person, like whoever did something good and they are sharing, like it is just kind of like you can see that they are happy, and we all know that it is not something like I'm making it up, just kind of, it is true. If it like in our day-to-day life, right? In our day-to-day life, we all know that, like it's like whatever, like if we did something virtuous thing, if we did something helpful, if we did something that we believe it is good, then how do you feel about it? We feel joyful, right? It's just like we feel joyful and we are proud about it. And then on the other hand, look at it. Like if we did something kind of non-virtuous, if we did something we are not supposed to do, if we did something negative thing, or like a negative action, and so then just kind of like generally, kind of we are not proud about it. We will not openly share about it. Nobody will just go and say, oh, I killed it, Nobody will actually kind of joyful about it. Nobody will say that sort of like, so that's kind of like if we look at all these like different actions, like all the non-virtuous action, like three of the body, which is killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, sort of like it is like there is by performing those actions, there is no joy in it, as well as there is not something to be something to be what do you call proud about, right? And the same thing like for non-virtuous action of the speech, right? The speech is also one very important factor in our life, right? We use as a human being, we are all social beings. So when we are in social, sort of like we use the speech, right? We use the speech, and then like a negative speech out of the 10 non-virtuous is like we call it zun tama tsiktsuk ngake. So means kind of like zun means lie, right? Lying. So that's a negative action of speech. Like when you lie, it's just not joyful, right? And it takes a lot of effort to lie, right? And then, just kind of like, what do you call it? Siktsuk means a kind of like a harsh word, like something hurtful, like some kind of like what do you call, harsh, bad kind of word. Then that is also like nobody really say that joyfully, right? And then even after you said it, other people are like it is kind of like you yourself, when you use it, it is you are not joyful. People don't use those things, right? Lying, like and harsh words, and then divisive words, like kind of, and then the gossip. People really, I don't know. Maybe sometimes people might think, okay, gossiping is very joyful. Somehow maybe it is kind of like a little bit, what do you call, kind of like people. So if you are addicted in gossiping about people, then it's just kind of like at that temporary moment, maybe you are kind of like it is like for time past, maybe it is very kind of like looks like a joyful, but just kind of like nobody really say, kind of proudly say that, I have been gossiping about you, or I'm like, nobody really feel proud about it. It's just kind of somehow, it's like we kind of like, we also say something like, in a hush-hush kind of way, like, oh, they are gossiping, sort of like so, and somehow it is kind of like, it is also, if we look at the bigger picture, it's also not a joyful, and it's also not an effortless, right? It takes a lot of effort. And then same thing, like three of the mental activities, like we call in Tibetan naksim, nesim, lokta. Sort of like naksim means like kind of like something harmful intention, right? Harmful to, like intention to harm, intention to hurt, like and that is like a negative what do you call, negative action from the mental mind. And then nafsim means a kind of like a something, what do you call, greed, sort of like a greed, like something always sort of like a kind of greed's a kind of like a mind, greedyful. And then lokta, sort of like means kind of like a wrong view in a sense that sort of like I'm right and everybody is wrong. That's kind of like a wrong view, right? So then, like to have those kind of negative action, so somehow it is not joyful, right? So that is why in the Dhammapada, Buddha actually said that Rani by seeing one's own pure action, they will be delightful and joyful in it. So somehow it is like a, it is, you are like a, very joyful. Like if when you, when you have a kind of like a positive, virtuous intention, when you are having virtuous intention, it is very joyful. And then when it is very joyful, something that is joyful, it is always effortless, right? So kind of like I saw this one quote, right? I think it is like basically I always say bumper sticker wisdom, right? Love what you do, do what you love. So somehow, like when you actually do what you love, then you do joyfully. So something that when you do something joyfully, then it is effortless. It is like very, it comes sort of like, it comes very naturally, sort of like it is, so nobody really feel tired actually if you do something that is very joyful. Sometimes, sometimes like we kind of like how time goes, like when we are having such a joyful time, right? Many times when we are having like a very painful time, then the time is very slow, right? When we are like when we are actually having a joyful, like if you're doing something joyful, then it is kind of, it comes effortless. So something like a kind of like that is very true. So in life, right? So that is why something that we do, like we should always learn how to do things joyfully. And how do we do things joyfully? And just kind of like do something pure, like a pure action, right? So like a pure action is always joyful, and then like a joyful action is effortless, right? So that is why, like if you notice, I put one picture in the Facebook. Actually, that picture is it's a moon. It is like this. I saw this picture somewhere in the Facebook that somebody actually took the moon from a same. They keep the camera and they took the moon picture of moon from like a new moon to like a new moon for 28 days, I think, and then how the moon actually goes around the earth. And this is also interesting because like sometimes kind of just for your information, you might know that, right? So like the moon actually goes around our planet, right? And somehow, like if you look at how moon goes around the earth, it's kind of like a, it is doing. I think that is a very pure action. It's a very pure action, and so somehow it is kind of going around the moon at the same speed, right? And it is also, I think it is going effortlessly. So I don't know about joyful, but I think it is like I don't know if the moon has a feeling or not, but it seems like it is joyfully doing, right? Joyfully is kind of rotating, right? Orbiting around the earth, right? The moon is orbiting around the earth. And then like I was very amazed to kind of know that like how they actually, the velocity, the speed, right? The speed of the moon going around the earth. And I was curious to know that how fast the moon is going around the earth. And then it is fascinating to kind of know that actually it says that it is going around the kind of like the moon is going around the earth like a 2,300 miles per hour. And so in kilometer, it is like a 3,700 kilometer per hour. Isn't that interesting? Like how fast actually moon is going around. But it's kind of like, and then it is also interesting that we live in this planet Earth, and our planet Earth is also doing its job very well, right? Because it is orbiting around the sun. And it is orbiting around the sun, and then kind of like out of curiosity, maybe, I kind of like checked, and then it is like very interesting to know that our planet Earth actually going around the sun 67,000 miles per hour. And in kilometer, it is like 107,000 kilometer per hour. And can you imagine, like, when we are driving, right? Sometime when we drive in the freeway in America, like, like sometime in Arizona, like, 75 kilometer or 75 miles per hour on a kind of, freeway. And if you go a little bit, faster than that, like if you go like, like 85, 95, just 95 kilometer per hour, how fast it is going. And then can you imagine going around like 67,000 miles per hour. So somehow, but we don't feel it, but it is kind of like so it's like how, kind of like if we look at how things, kind of from action, if you look at the universe, everything is actually doing its own action. So everything is in action. Like, moon is in action, going around the earth. Earth is in action, going around the sun. And then sun is also going around something, right? So see, there's kind of like everything in the midst of all this happening action. So we also are performing action. And then somehow we, human being, we are not joyful. Why? Because many of our actions are not pure. Because, many of our action that we do is it is related to some non-virtuous action. So when we are doing something non-virtuous action, then somehow, if it is related, even it is slightly related to some non-virtuous action, some impure action, then we are not we are not joyful about it. We will be tired, and it takes a lot of effort. So somehow, we should learn from that kind of thing. So that is why, kind of like what actually Buddha said in the Dhammapada. It's a very, very interesting, and so somehow this is the wisdom of the, Buddha's teaching. Joyful here in this life and hereafter. So if kind of if we do virtuous action, so the virtuous person is joyful in both worlds. So it is like, so if you don't believe in next life, then this, in both worlds, sort of like inner, inside and outside. Maybe, you can actually interpret that way too. If you do something virtuous, if you are a virtuous person, then you are happy. Internally you are happy, outwardly you are happy. Sort of like I think we can interpret that way too. And then, by seeing one's own pure action, like if when we are doing a pure action, when we are actually doing something good, right? Then it is like they will be delightful and joyful in it. Just kind of, it is just natural. So that is why, every action, if we actually make all our action pure, then somehow whatever action that we are doing, it is joyful and it is effortless, and it is like you will love. You kind of it's just kind of, you are living the life that you love what you do. And then, when you love what you are doing, then it is joyful. And it is like when we do something joyfully, then we do it completely, right? When we do it kind of when we are not happy about doing whatever we are doing, then it's just somehow we leave it half, and then we actually leave a lot of unfinished business, right? There's a lot of unfinished business. Because why? Because we are not happy doing it. We are not joyful in it. And then, when we are not so joyful about it, then it is just it takes a lot of effort. And then somehow it is just kind of we are thinking okay, oh, this is so tiring, I don't want to do this. And then all these kind of giving up, right? Giving up kind of things. So that is why any action if whatever we do, if we do that is like a pure, like with the pure intention, with the like a pure action itself, and then just kind of like we conclude that with some sort of like a rejoicement and something like a feeling proud about it, and so just kind of like if we complete that action, then it is like we complete. So there is no unfinished business. So when we don't have an unfinished business, then somehow it doesn't consider to be a negative karma. So many times, negative karma is like sometimes I actually think that negative karma is an unfinished business. So somehow, like even from the Buddhist point of view, like in samsara, we have to come back again and again. Why? Because in many lifetimes, we left a lot of things undone, unfinished. So somehow, we already started something, and then, like who has to finish it? You have to finish it. If you have started something, you have to finish it. So that is why, from the Buddhist point of view, we say that karma is something that we left something unfinished, like, and we have a lot of unfinished business and incomplete business that comes from our past life, and even in this very lifetime, we have so many unfinished things. So we don't do things completely, right? So there's something undone, and so somehow, like if you look at the karma, why we are actually going around the samsara again and again, and because that actually also is a kind of it answers because we leave so many things unfinished and complete, undone. So like karma is like something that we always come back to complete it, and then when we are like something that we started, like impure action, non-virtuous action, we started. Like if, for example, if we have some sort of like a negative intention, then we already started that action, and then somehow, in some point, maybe we have to finish it. So that is why, unfinished business, incomplete karma, like action is a karma. But then there's actually good news about it, that unfinished karma, like if we have some sort of unfinished karma, then we, like if we kind of, confess, like we confess, and then if we do like a purification practice, that is why in the Buddhist practice there's like a vajrasattva practice, like a confession, purification practice, like somehow, like it's like you started some business or job, but then you left it unfinished, like in the file, like in the computer, and then you go back and you can erase. So somehow, there's sometimes, the good news is you can erase the incomplete, like sort of like you erase things like that. So anyway, kind of like a joyful action, like if we do something in action that is pure by, from intention, by its own action, and then with a completion, somehow it completes. And then when you complete an action joyfully, something that you joyfully complete the action, then there is a consequences. The consequences is also joyful. Consequences is also pure, right? Pure, kind of like a pure seed. The seed of purity will bring a pure result. So that, like, if that is simple, right? So sometimes we make karma very complicated, but in general, karma is not confused, complicated. Actually, it is very simple. Like it is just like if you sow the seed, a pure seed, then the result will be pure. If you sow the seed of impurity, then the result will be impure. And so that's kind of simple like that. Anyway, so that is one wisdom from the Dhammapada that is actually kind of like think about it, contemplate on this, and these words that I translated in English is not so difficult. So even if you are a Tibetan speaker, or you can actually look at the Tibetan words here, and this translation that is done in Tibetan is very easy to understand, and that is one of the quality of this scholar Gindu Chimbe, that when his translation is very easy to understand. So I try to translate it in English so that people can understand if you're not understanding the Tibetan. Anyway, so that is our Wednesday Dhammapada teaching. All right. So hope everybody is staying safe, and so I am looking here. So so today, somehow we have a few people here. So Mary Kay, Tashi Delek, Mary Kay, and then Peter Howe, Tashi Delek, and then John Gossett, Tashi Delek, and Master Angel, Tashi Delek, Uyen Doin, Tashi Delek, and then Miyuki Onozawa Watanabe, Tashi Delek, and then Graham Bennett, Listen Love Song, Tashi Delek, and Sandra Baraza, Tashi Delek, Miho Sang, Tashi Delek. All right. So anyway, maybe Lu San Tashi Delek, I see you here, and then maybe some, I as always, kind of like I don't see, some of the comments here, because when I go back and forth on my iPad, sometimes those, things, kind of like the comments or question, kind of like it doesn't appears on my screen. So John Gossett is saying wonderful teaching. Thank you, John. So. So if you have any question or like a comment, please put on the comment, and if not, then I think that is our Wednesday teaching. All right, and then I see Regula from Ernie, Tashi Delek Ernie. From tantric practice, is karma abiding only achieved at the completion stage? In the Vajrayana, it is there is no kind of like a, what do you call, kind of stage of achieving karma abiding after completion stage or a generation stage. It is like some people before they go into Vajrayana practice, they might have already have completion. They already have a karma abiding, shine, karma abiding. So karma abiding is kind of like it's a tool, like and also you don't have to practice Vajrayana or tantric practice to achieve the karma abiding. And karma abiding shine is like it is practice that can be done by anybody, right? So it is just kind of like it is when you actually train your mind to do a single pointed concentration, right? If you can concentrate on one object without sort of like a distraction for for a long time. And I think that is called the karma abiding, right? Karma abiding, sort of like you actually somehow you can actually use your mind to concentrate on some object. So that is why karma abiding is not a Buddhist kind of quality. Like even like there are like people, just anybody, So that is why it is not. Kind of like it is not an achievement of the tantric practice. So sometimes people achieve karma abiding before tantric practice, and then sometimes so that is why karma abiding is not a mandatory achievement for the tantric practice. So it is like sometimes they achieve early, sometimes they achieve later, and but in generally. kind of like some tantric, Vajrayana practitioner. So without kind of making it as a main, like come abiding as a not as a main, what do you call, kind of like a focus. So if you actually kind of do practice, visualize, if you practice visualize, and then if you can visualize and you can concentrate on an object that you are visualizing for a long period of time without any distraction, and then somehow, you will achieve. So that is why, come abiding can be achieved even before completion stage, even before the generation stage. Yes, all right? All right, then I see Ninju Kumaran Tashidelek and Namaskaram. And Ninju, you are saying it is impossible to express sufficient gratitude to you for not just these clear and selfless teaching, but for exemplifying purity, positivity, joyfulness, and completeness, fullness. Namo Namaha. Okay, thank you. And then I think your same question. All right, so that is comment. Thank you, Ninju. Okay, then I see Regula saying, Tashidelek Rinpoche, you said last week, okay, that there is a clear light in the negative emotion. The essence of mind is already there. Yes, I think it is, like any negative emotion or mind, even like if we say the anger is part of mind, right? It's a part of mind. So any mind is, like same Giranshi Selva, sort of like any mind has the essence of the mind, it has a clarity, like there's a clear light. So I think it is, as long as it is a mind, so that is why like a negative, negative mind, on the surface, it is kind of like, it is harmful, but on the kind of like the nature of that negative mind is a pure and clear light. So I think that is why like negative emotion, or as long as it is mind, then it is there is a clear light in it. So it is part of a so like that, I think, right? So. But negative emotion is an affliction. Yeah, of course, it's an affliction, but it is a mind, right? It's a part of mind. So as long as it is a part of mind, it has a clarity. So there's a clear light in it. So it is affliction. Why? Because on the surface it is harmful, but inside the nature. So what is the nature? It is pure by nature, but impure from the outside. That's why it is called the affliction. So how is there a clear light in the affliction? Can you please explain more? Thank you very much for your teaching. Yes, I think then it is generally, it is kind of like like for example, if there is a cruel person, right? If there is a cruel person, so that cruel person, from inside, that cruel person has a Buddha nature. But, outside that person is cruel, right? So that person is cruel, but so that is kind of like all the negative emotion or afflictions. They are affliction because on the surface it is negative, it is harmful, but inside is a clear light because it is part of mind. I think that is what it is. I think. All right. And then Ninju is saying it is. Okay, so I think you are saying the same thing here, right? All right. Okay. So, so I think that is our talk for tonight. And thank you for so Ninju is saying thank you for the beautiful reassurance that even in negative mental underneath is purity and light. Yes, I think as long as it is mind, and that is why it is like all sentient beings, right? The Buddha said that all sentient being has a Buddha nature. So by nature, so that is sort of nature, sort of by nature meaning sort of like it just kind of, it is pure, from its, it is pure from, it is like a nothing, even though if it is an affliction, even though if it is a negative mind or negative emotion, just kind of, it is by nature, it is not impure. And somehow, it is made impure, it is like a kind of somehow it is made up. So that is why it is like impurity, all the non-virtuous action, impurity, all the impure things are made up. It's a constructed thing. So it is kind of like, it is something made up. So by nature it is pure, and that is why it is always like when we actually perform pure action, but it is pure by nature. So somehow it connects that. So that is why, I think His Holiness the Dalai Lama always says that by nature we are all sentient being, not only human being. We are all compassionate, loving, right? And also as a human being, when we came into this world as a baby, we are like a very innocent, pure, compassionate, loving person, right? Nobody came into this world with such an angry, nobody really came into this world, as a baby. Nobody really thought that they will actually do something bad, right? And just kind of and then when we grow up, somehow, some people turn into cruel, some people turn into very negative person. So, if we look into there, if we bring that the baby, kind of pureness in them, then, this one person we call a so impure, negative person, it doesn't fall from the sky like that, right? That person was a baby one time, and very pure, innocent, very, pure. So see, that is, we all have a baby in ourselves, right? So that is kind of purity. So that is what, something to think about. And that is what, by nature, even though it is an impure action, impure emotion, impure mind, nature is pure. And that is why, that is the reason, because by nature it is pure. So if we actually kind of unnecessarily made it impure, unnecessarily doing something, then it doesn't fit into the pureness. And that is why the conflict comes. So by nature it is pure, and then if we actually kind of let it be pure by itself, by how it is, then it is kind of joyful and it is effortless, right? All right. Anyway, so that is our teaching for tonight. And so everybody, I will say, take a leave now, and good night from India, and good day in America and other places. So, okay. So everybody stay safe, and then see you next Wednesday. All right. Happy Wednesday to all of you. Tashi Delek.